It was January 2016, and social media was still growing in many ways into new and exciting platforms for everyone to communicate on. One of the platforms that had grown considerably since it went live in 2010 was Kik Messenger.
Most parents know they need to look at the apps on their kids' phones, but have you heard of
Kik Messenger? Digital reporter Jacob Newton is taking a closer look at the app and how it works and the warnings that come with it.
Kik is a free phone application that allows you to communicate with people across the world. There's no one here to monitor your conversations or check to see if you are who you say you are.
The original idea behind the group of students that created Kik was for it to be a music sharing app. It then rebranded and quickly transitioned into messaging as well. This proved massively popular, and just 2 weeks after the messaging rebrand, over 1 million accounts were added. And by 2016 it had around 300 million registered users and was being visited by a massive 40% of teenagers in the United States. 13-year-old Nicole Lovell was one of those users. Nicole lived in Blacksburg, Virginia with her mom Tammy. Her parents were no longer together, and Tammy said that the relationship Nicole had with her dad David had been strained. He had served time in jail and had had many run-ins with the law over the years. David himself admitted that he had regrets, wishing he could have changed how things had been, but they were all trying to rebuild things. And at such a young age, Nicole had already gone through so much. She needed to have medication twice a day after having a liver transplant at just 10 months old. 3 years after her liver transplant, she was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which developed into acute respiratory distress syndrome, and she was in and out of a coma for 6 months. Her lung collapse and a tracheotomy had left her with a big scar on her throat. Her mom Tammy said, "We were advised at that time that she would only have a 1% chance of survival." Coley once again beat the odds though. Despite an unbelievably tough start to her life, everyone said that Nicole always tried hard to be positive, happy and adventurous.
Nicole Lovell, and I've been nominated for the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge.
School had been challenging for the young teenager. She faced bullying because of her scars and would often beg Tammy to write her a note so she could get out of PE. Nicole often shared her sadness and frustrations on social media, but she was determined to never slow down and always pushed herself to get through things. She was quite literally born fighting, and that was what she always did. Tammy said Nicole loved animals, especially pandas. She also loved singing and dancing, and she never missed an episode of American Idol, telling people she would be on it one day. On January 26, 2016, Nicole had had a lovely day shopping at the local mall with her best friend, where they bought matching necklaces. That evening, Tammy said Nicole gave her a kiss goodnight, took a shower, and went up to her bedroom. It was an evening like any other. The following morning, 6:30 a.m. Nicole needed her anti-rejection medication for her liver twice a day, and Tammy would always go to her room first thing to make sure she had taken it before she got ready for work. But her daughter's door wouldn't open. Tammy knocked but couldn't hear anything inside, so she forced her way in. Her door had been blocked by her nightstand. Nicole loved to dress up and dance around her bedroom, and Tammy said she would sometimes push her nightstand out of the way to make more room, but it was always back in place the next morning. This was really troubling. Nicole was not in her room. Her window was open and her room was freezing cold. Her phone was missing, as was her favourite blanket, which had minions on it. Also left behind was her medication. Without this, Tammy said she would take a terrible turn in just a few short hours. Tammy called her daughter's phone numerous times, but it just kept going straight to voicemail. She then called round some of the other parents and neighbours' houses, but no one could help her. So at 7 a.m, Tammy made the call that every parent dreads. Tammy told the police that this had never happened before and something had to be seriously wrong. Nicole would take her phone and blanket with her everywhere, but to disappear in the middle of a freezing cold night out the window, no one could make sense of it. Tammy said she was devastated because she almost knocked on the door that night to see if Nicole wanted to come and sleep in her bed with her like she normally did. but that night she didn't. Her case was already serious anyway, but with snow covering the ground and the fact she was now somewhere without her life-saving medication in the bitter cold made everything so much more urgent.
Nicole has to take medication twice a day for a liver transplant. The fear is that going without this medication could potentially be deadly. Her mom, Tammy Weeks, clutched Nicole's favorite stuffed panda bear as she pleaded with her daughter to come home or that whoever is with her would bring her back safely.
A nightmare.
Yeah, it's like you see it all on TV and everything, you think it's never going to happen to you, and then here we are in the position that everybody else is going through, and it's just, don't know what to think. It's shocking. I mean, didn't think it'd ever happen to us. So
We love you, Nicole. We miss you. We want you home.
Police say they don't know at this point if this is a runaway situation or if there was foul play involved. Nicole's mother says she believes someone had to have helped her get out of the house last night. Anyone with information on Nicole's whereabouts is asked to call police right away.
Law enforcement quickly called upon the FBI to help too, and over 1,000 people in her hometown came together to split off into numerous search parties. There were helicopters, dogs, and some volunteers even brought an infrared drone. It was all hands on deck to find Nicole Lovell. One of Nicole's neighbours spoke to Tammy and the police about a conversation she had had with her own daughter. Her daughter had said that Nicole had told her she was going on a date with her boyfriend.
They were sleigh riding in the snow in the back on the hill, and she was talking about this boyfriend she had that was 18 and went to college, and his name was David, and showed some text messages off of Kik and pictures, and that's what the girls told the police officers when they asked.
Nicole told her friend that she met her older boyfriend online. She said he was funny and really nice and he was going to take her on a romantic date the night she went missing. On her bedroom wall, Nicole had actually taped a piece of paper with some of her usernames and passwords, one of which was for Kik Messenger. The police put in an emergency disclosure request to the app. Kik Messenger responded immediately and the police quickly got access to all of her messages. The social media platform Kik gives users a lot of anonymity when it comes to signing up. It does not need people to provide a phone number or email address, it just needs Wi-Fi and a username. But it does log user IP addresses and does not have end-to-end encryption. End-to-end encryption is a method that keeps your communication completely secure. It means no one can read or intercept the messages as they travel between your phone and the phone of the person you're messaging. This would make it very easy for the authorities to be able to get hold of all of the conversation between Nicole and the person likely behind her being missing. Her dad David said that his daughter had been grounded from using social media just before she went missing. He said you could tell these older guys have fake profiles. Some of the things they said were way too grown up for the picture they had. We found out before Christmas and took her phone away from her. She later got her phone back and Tammy and David reiterated how important it was to stay safe and vigilant. Tammy had even gotten her to delete the Kik messaging app, but evidently Nicole had reinstalled it.
Tonight in the search for a missing and endangered Blacksburg teenager.
A Virginia Tech drone used infrared technology from the skies throughout the day, while officers from 6 police departments, as well as the FBI, continue to look on foot.
Thursday, officers from 7 different police agencies were joined by about 1,000 Virginia Tech Corps of Cadets members. Today, the cadets are no longer a part of the search, which is why the command center area does not need to be quite as large. That being said, though, police say this does not mean they are scaling down the search. In fact, they have just as many officers, if not more, involved in the investigation today. Now, tonight, Nicole's family is once again pleading with anyone who has information to come forward.
Somebody out there has got to know something. This COVID is way too much for everybody not to know. And Nicole knows we wait.
Kik confirmed that Nicole had been talking to another user for months, called Dr. Tombstone. And at 5:30 a.m. on January 30th, police made arrest of a very unlikely suspect.
We went the distance to tell you about one of the greatest distance runners this state has, and his name is
David Eisenhower.
I make my personal goals achievable, or just out of reach of achievable. That way I'm always constantly striving to better myself. If that goal becomes a record, or if that goal is past a record, or records get broken in the process, I consider that like a milestone goal, but that's not where I ultimately want to end up. I just have this internal thing saying I want to be the best. There is no reason why I cannot be as good as other people are. I will personally not stop until I reach my peak performance, which could be anywhere.
David won the Triple Crown, a miler, 2-miler, and cross-country champion. And what an accomplished student he is, not ducking hard courses like differential equations.
I'm thinking that this is a super hard math class, but now that I'm in it and I'm being successful in that class, I'm reviving the spirit in myself, saying that there's no reason why I can't do these things.
Dr. Tombstone was actually an 18-year-old engineering student at Virginia Tech called David Eisenhower. David, by all accounts, was a great student and a star athlete at his college, even making the news. He was a hard worker, very charismatic, and a sociable guy. One of his classmates said he was a very celebrated student, always getting straight A's. People were baffled to hear his name linked to something so awful. David's roommate had walked right into the arrest as it happened and was stunned. But he said looking back, now he knew the details of what they were investigating. The way David had been behaving around the time Nicole went missing was definitely odd. The night she disappeared, David had left the apartment wearing big heavy boots and came back at 2 a.m. He also later admitted he knew there was a knife in David's room on his desk, but when the police were there, the knife was mysteriously nowhere. Down at the station, David was denying anything to do with her being missing, but he did admit that he had been talking to her online.
Mid-December, if I remember correctly, I was bored in my dorm room and logged on to a website where you go and you just talk to random strangers. It's an anonymous the website is called Omegle, if I believe correctly. Okay. And then she's like, hey, do you want to use message me on some app called Kik? And I was like, sure, whatever.
He said they had originally met on Omegle before moving over to Kik. Omegle is another anonymous site which instantly connects you to random people all over the world. It is worth mentioning that in 2023, Omegle was actually shut down. David admitted he went to meet her that night outside her apartment, but when he realised she was so young, he left and went back to his college dorm. He said from talking to her, he was under the impression she was 16 or 17, but she looked about 11.
We're talking and she's like, yeah, I'm 16 or 17, I do not remember the age, she said. I get there, and then I see someone who probably looked like she was 11 years old climb out of a window, and I was like, not for me.
But as well as the Kik conversations they had to go through, they also spoke to a man called Dustin, who had been friendly with David for years, talking via an online gaming site. David would often come to him for advice, sometimes about girls. Dustin said he had had a conversation with David about a girl David was talking to that was underage. David said the girl wanted to expose him if he didn't want to be with her. Whether he was talking about Nicole, and whether if it was Nicole it was actually true, is not known. But this did prove one thing. If it was Nicole, he definitely knew she was far younger than 16 or 17. Dustin did tell David he needed to bring whatever this was to an end. But Nicole and David had been communicating for months right up until the hour before she vanished. It seemed from their chats that they had actually met at least once before, and authorities said they had, quote, most likely been intimate, although the details of this have not been elaborated on. During the interview, David tripped himself up and said something that raised more eyebrows.
This young lady's never been heard from again. Okay? So it's not going to be possible for us to believe that account of events. I told you, I do not know where she is. I think the police should look more into finding a body than try to interrogate the last person who saw her alive, who clearly left the scene. Why are you staring at me like that? Because you can tell when people are lying based on their ears and their pupils, which is how I know that you are stuck. And I'm not stuck. I've got lots of options.
Although authorities felt they were now looking for a body, they hadn't said this. Nicole was technically still a missing person. David, now knowing his interview was not going well, tried to offer up some partial truths and admitted that he had been and bought a shovel with a friend, which he knew looked bad, but it was purely for the snow.
Yeah, I have a shovel in my car. Bought it from Walmart right after it. Snow shovel? I think garden shovel. It's like a $15 shovel or something.
They found the shovel in the back of his car, which had blood on it, as well as blood in the back seats and in the trunk. David said it wasn't just him that bought the shovel and gave them a name, Natalie Keepers.
Would it help to mention I had someone else with me when I bought the shovel for snow purposes? I was like, hey, can I come by your dorm room, please? Her name is Natalie Keepers.
He said when he left Nicole that night, he had gone to meet Natalie, so that proved he wasn't with Nicole for long. David was arrested and charged with a felony count of abduction.
Say that I now stand up and put your hands behind your back. You are under arrest for the abduction of Nicole Madison Lovell.
A few hours after this, detectives met 19-year-old Natalie, also an engineering student at Virginia Tech. Natalie was also a great student and wanted to follow in her dad's footsteps, who worked as an engineer with NASA. She had always done well in her grades and enjoyed performing in plays. She was arrested in her boyfriend's dorm and taken in for questioning. In her room, they made a disturbing find: Nicole's Minions blanket inside a suitcase and a huge amount of recently purchased cleaning products.
Yeah, we're just trying to piece together, good things. And that's why, like I said, the Walmart, that was an event that we were interested in.
Okay. Why, may I ask why you're interested in it?
For the missing girl.
Yeah.
Natalie, unlike David, however, was talking a lot. She said David had stabbed her to death and then contacted Natalie to help move Nicole's body.
We know that you have information about this. What do you think was going on in your phone?
She was driving.
Natalie, how much are you involved in this?
He forced me to move to help him move her body. He stabbed her. He killed her in the woods. The next day, he told me that he needed help. We went to Walmart. We got baby wipes and bleach, and she was in the trunk, and then he drove.
She said that David had told her he was worried Nicole could be pregnant. He said he had met her at a party after she told him she was 16, and said he may have had sex with her but couldn't remember because he was blacked out and woke up in a ditch. Natalie said he was worried that Nicole was going to expose him, which did also track with what Dustin had said. David, put simply, needed to remove this problem. With this admission, the investigation would take a dark turn that everyone had been fearing.
Missing 13-year-old Nicole Lovell's remains were found by police today. Since then, officers from 7 agencies, including the FBI, focused on a 1-mile radius around Nicole's home. And then in a news conference held tonight, authorities delivered the news that no one wanted to hear. They say that her body was found in Surrey County, North Carolina, near the state's border.
I'm Anthony Wilson. I'm the chief of Blacksburg Police Department. Unfortunately, we're coming together tonight. The news I have to share this evening is extremely difficult for me to tell. It's with a heavy heart that I have to announce that we've located the remains of 13-year-old Nicole Madison Lovell. This has been an extremely fast-paced investigation within just the past 12 hours. It was late Saturday night when the investigation led us to 18-year-old David E. Eisenhower. He continues to be held without bond in the Montgomery County Jail. This investigation is far from over as we continue to conduct multiple interviews and processing additional evidence related to this crime. We're going to take a few questions, but before we do, I just want to remind everyone that this is the most devastating thing that you can do to a family. We have some very wounded folks in our community, and we ask that you please show them some respect. We will continue to be very transparent with you during this investigation, but just remember, these are the kind of crimes that rip communities apart.
My daughter, Nicole Lovell, Coley is what we called her. Coley had a passion for pandas, music, dancing, dreamed of being on American Idol someday. Her favorite color was blue. Nicole was a very lovable person. Nicole touched many people throughout her short life. Yeah, I can't do that part.
The body of Nicole Lovell was found about 80 miles south of her home. She was naked and covered in 14 stab wounds, including one to her neck, which alone would have proved fatal. Despite Natalie's half story about David fearing Nicole might be pregnant, but not being sure, the medical examiner confirmed she was not. David was still denying everything and said he had left her alive and well outside of her building. But his story would soon be blown apart even more, and thanks to a tip-off from Nicole's friend, the Kik chat logs and what his accomplice Natalie was about to admit over 26 hours of interviews, detectives got a much clearer picture of what had happened to the 13-year-old. David and Natalie had been planning what would happen to Nicole as early as the new year. On January 26th, just before 3 p.m, phone data showed David leaving the Virginia Tech campus and heading in the direction of Christiansburg, about a 15-minute drive. Between 3:10 and 4:36 p.m, his phone placed him near a Target store and a Walmart. He and Natalie went and bought a shovel. Later that night, between 10 to 10 and 10:21 p.m, both David and Natalie were sat in a cookout restaurant. Natalie said they were planning on what was going to happen to Nicole. They initially spoke about shooting or drugging Nicole and making it look like she had taken her own life, knocking her unconscious and leaving her to die outside in the cold. They then changed their mind and settled on what Natalie called the official plan, which was, in her words, grab her from behind, cover her mouth, and slit her throat. They left the cookout and travelled to a rural area where they looked for a location to hide Nicole's body. At 11:42 p.m, David's phone briefly pinged near his campus again, and it seemed like he and Natalie had parted ways. It was now 5 minutes before midnight and David's phone was pinging near Nicole's apartment. January 27th, 12:39 a.m. Nicole sent David, Dr. Tombstone, a message on Kik Messenger. David was outside waiting for her in his car, so she grabbed her minion's blanket and phone and climbed out of her window. David's phone showed he drove to Cray Creek Road at 1 a.m, where he stayed for about 45 minutes, before leaving at 1:46 a.m. It was during this time that Nicole was stabbed to death. At around 2 a.m, he was back at his campus. David sent Natalie a message saying Nicole was dead. Natalie and David drove in his Lexus to where he had left Nicole's body. Natalie said she couldn't remember the timings, but they drove back to Cray Creek Road and into the surrounding woods. They dragged Nicole's body out and put her in the back of his car. Natalie said they had originally wanted to bury her on his grandparents' property but changed their minds. They left her body in the car while the pair went to grab cleaning supplies. They then crossed the North Carolina line and pulled off into a rural side road so they could find a secluded area. They removed Nicole's clothes, covered her in bleach, and dumped her body.
And then he pulled forward and then he was like, we could dump her right there, and pointed to the spot that we ended up dumping her at. I think he said something like, what a bitch, she got blood everywhere. And then he just started like mumbling like, all right, how am I gonna pull her out? And like, then he pulls her out.
By himself?
Yeah.
You don't help him?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I walked behind the car to see what he was doing, and he basically tugged on her leg and kind of pulled her out so she just kind of fell out of the trunk.
He had no emotion. He became a sociopath, and he thought of me as a sociopath in training, I guess.
They drove back towards their university, stopping along the way to get a McDonald's, where they bought a couple of drinks and threw Nicole's bloody clothes into the bins. After they set off again, David threw the knife out of the car into the woods. Once they arrived back at the campus, they split for a bit before meeting up again to wash their own clothes at the laundromat. Natalie sent a text to David saying, "Get some sleep. You deserve it." The pair then went on another drive, disposing of the rest of Nicole's belongings. Over the following day, the pair exchanged several messages talking about how their bodies smelled like cleaning products, but they were glad they did what they did to ensure that everything was covered up. They also exchanged statistics about how many missing children are never located. David said to Natalie, as long as nobody finds the body for a week, so we're good. Natalie replied, yep. And when the police knocked on Natalie's boyfriend's door to question her, she sent a text to David in all caps, simply saying, police. Little did she know, he was already sat in a cell. David Eisenhower was charged with first-degree murder as well as abduction. Natalie Keepers was also charged with a felony count of improper disposal of a dead body and a misdemeanor count of accessory after the fact in the commission of a felony.
Today, 2 Maryland teens are behind bars in connection with her death and disappearance.
18-year-old David Eisenhower was once a star athlete here at this high school in Columbia, but tonight he's under arrest and charged with murder, and police say he did not act alone. Virginia authorities say Eisenhower had the help of 19-year-old and fellow Virginia Tech student Natalie Keepers. Police arresting Keepers of Laurel, Maryland for helping to dump Lovell's body just over the Virginia border.
It seemed that Natalie and David were casual friends. They weren't ever romantic, nor were they very close. Natalie's parents said they were aware that the two knew each other, but they only heard David's name a couple of months beforehand. But neither them nor the police could really find any reason why Natalie would be involved in something like this. She had no connection to Nicole at all either, but here she was, planning her death for weeks.
Victim in this case, 13-year-old Nicole Lovell, was laid to rest today. A large turnout as family and friends gathered to remember Nicole and say their final goodbyes.
And every day, we also vow to spread just a fraction of the shining light that she was to this world these brief 13 years.
Prayers were sent by members of Help Save the Next Girl, a nonprofit group that helps raise awareness about safety. They made this tribute to Nicole. It has the color blue, a panda, and music, some of her favorite things. Some tech students signed the custom-made painting to show their support for Coley. At the bottom, lyrics to a song dedicated to their little mountain angel and her family.
I can't imagine the pain that her family and her friends are going through right now. And it's important to show that Virginia Tech students care. It's important to show that the community cares.
And through these signs of love and support, this sea of broken hearts hopes to come together and heal as one.
During a hearing where David and Natalie were applying for bail, Natalie told the judge she had no criminal past, had mental health issues, and had always been trying really hard in school and college, graduating among the top 15% of her class at high school. Both their bails were denied.
David Eisenhower's preliminary hearing has been rescheduled for May 20th following a delay earlier this month. The former Virginia Tech student...
In early 2018, David's trial began. His lawyers tried to put all the blame on Natalie. They called 2 teachers and a former classmate of his to the stand. Both teachers from Riverside Christian School said he was a smart and kind student, but had trouble socially. One teacher taught David in a Bible class and called him bright, but said he needed clear rules to be successful. She said he would follow someone off a cliff if they convinced him it was the right thing to do.
The defense focused much of its witness questioning trying to establish that Eisenhower is easily influenced by others. Mental health professionals testified that Natalie Keepers, who awaits a trial for being an accessory in this case, orchestrated the crimes, and Eisenhower would not have wanted to kill Lovell without her influence.
I think she was the mastermind. I think she is the driver of the process. I think she has found somebody that she can manipulate.
They also said that the bloody handprint found on the shovel, which belonged to Natalie, proved that David had nothing to do with what had happened. But on day 4 of the testimonies, things took a turn.
Guilty or not guilty?
No contest.
David Eisenhower changed his mind and entered a plea of no contest. A plea of no contest means a defendant acknowledges there is enough evidence to convict them, but they don't admit to committing the crime. This plea essentially had the same effect as a guilty plea, however.
But that plea didn't stop the Commonwealth from reading them aloud to the judge and in front of Eisenhower's parents.
They came about because I couldn't keep it in my pants. I think I'm done for a little bit. From the defendant, too late. I need a place to hide a body in case it goes really bad.
Those conversations were taken from Eisenhower's phone and social media kick account he used to talk to Natalie Keepers, Nicole Lovell, and another 16-year-old girl that he had a romantic relationship with, all of which he shared details about the murder.
From the defendant, I guess we figured out how people commit mass murder now. From the defendant. So as long as nobody finds the body for a week, it will never be traced.
But most heartbreaking, bringing mom Tammy Weeks to tears, a message was read aloud from Eisenhower's admirer, 13-year-old Nicole Lovell.
Dear David, you are my crush, but I know you don't think of me like that, but I don't care. I will always be here if you're looking for a good time. I'm here when you had a bad day. I'm here and I don't want that to change. I want to be in your life for as long as you can stand me, and I know I'm annoying and I ask for too much, but I'm a girl and I have a heart and feelings. And my feelings get hurt a lot, but it's never been hurt by you, and I like that.
Perhaps one of the last she ever sent.
He was given a 75-year total sentence, but 50 of those will be in a prison cell, and he will serve the remaining 25 years on probation. In court, Nicole's family tried to convey the impact this had had on them, but as one can imagine, no words can sum it up.
Outside the courthouse, she told 10 News that today did not give her closure.
I'm just numb right now. It's not real.
Nicole's father, David, says he now has PTSD and struggles with depression.
Just a horrible crime on her. It's a shame. And there's nothing that can happen in the schoolroom that will ever fix it.
Her grandfather says he still visits her grave every day.
Upside down, can't eat. Take her off. We don't eat, say, we don't sleep.
Natalie Keepers pleaded guilty to helping conceal Nicole's body, but was still pleading not guilty to being an accessory to murder before the fact. So now it was time for her to face trial. Natalie's lawyers called their own clinical psychologist, who diagnosed her with 6 disorders, including borderline personality disorder, depersonalization derealization disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, panic disorder, and possibly schizophrenia. He said this meant her first interview with the detectives was unreliable. He also said she would have been easy to convince to do something, and she was essentially an easy prey for David. Her defense team argued that a combination of mental health issues and anxiety meant she was easily coerced and manipulated and wanted to please other people and earn their love. They said she had difficulty knowing and understanding what was real. She'd been excited to be part of something with someone. She said it made her feel special and loved. But she also said she believed it was a joke and David wouldn't actually go through with it. But prosecutors said Natalie knew Nicole was going to end up dead. She had worked out the plan with David and seemed to really enjoy doing it. That was clear to see.
2 of the Natalie Keepers trial reveals new evidence never before seen in the Nicole Lovell murder case.
Nearly 2 hours of Keepers' interrogation tapes were shown to the jury.
Well, it was certainly a heartbreaking moment for Nicole Lovell's family today when the medical examiner who did the autopsy on Nicole Lovell testified that the 13-year-old was still alive when her neck was broken due to blunt force trauma. We know that she ultimately died after a stab wound to her neck. The big reveal today, however, was seeing the police interrogation videos of Natalie Keepers. In those videos, we heard conflicting stories of what happened, but she did tell police she knew Eisenhower was planning Nicole Lovell's murder and said that he even talked to her about how he planned to do it. She said on those tapes about 16 hours worth, multiple times, however, that in her heart, she didn't believe that Eisenhower could do it, but logically, she knew he wanted to. Keepers was extremely emotional during those tapes, often sobbing to investigators. While the tapes played in court, she was very reactionary, often nodding or shaking her head, even hanging her head down at times, crying. Here's a clip from that audio we heard today.
If I was there, I would have stopped it. I would have stopped it. I wouldn't have let him do anything. Even if I had to see him do that to her, the first thing I would have done is start the car and drove and left because I didn't think David could do such a thing.
Now, a shocker today came when the defense entered video into evidence that they previously hoped to keep out of court, where Natalie Keeper said David Eisenhower, quote, forced her to help him hide Lovell's body. There are a lot of conflicting things on those tapes, including Keeper saying that she thought that this was all just a fantasy that she and Eisenhower were acting out, and that they were members of a, quote, secret club. Now she knows that he was only manipulating her.
After just 1 hour, the jury returned their verdict.
We, the jury, unanimously found the defendant, Natalie Marie Keepers, guilty of being an accessory before the fact of first-degree murder as charged.
Natalie Keepers was sentenced to 45 years in prison, but will only serve 40 of those, as 5 were suspended. After 40 years, she will be put on 10 years of probation. There is no chance of parole before their 40 and 50 years. They both spoke to Nicole's family in court, but their words were hollow to say the least.
I am sorry for the pain that my actions have caused Nicole Lovell and her family. It is my deepest regret, and I'm aware my actions have serious consequences. Nothing can ever undo what has been done, and for that, I am deeply, sincerely, and forever sorry.
I never intended for this to happen.
Many were disappointed at David's sentence especially, confused as to why it was only technically 10 years more than Natalie's. And the motive for this awful murder is still really not known. David has never admitted to the crime, let alone his motive in killing her. Kik Messenger came under fire along with other platforms that operate in a similar way. Tammy said she had tried to stay on top of her daughter's internet activity, but faced the same challenges many other parents do when it came to monitoring it. Her dad David said she was able, at 13 years old, to go and set up profiles on Facebook that we had no idea about, and a minor should not be able to do that. We have no idea who they're talking to.
A big question for parents this morning: are apps like these safe for your children? ABC's TJ Holmes is here with some very important information.
You remember there was a time when parents had to warn their kids about looking out for strangers at the playground or outside the school. Now they got to warn them about strangers right there on their cell phone. Kik, this wildly popular app, anyone can download it for free, and within a matter of minutes they can be sending a private message directly to your child.
You can sign up as anybody you want to be. It really becomes a private hunting preserve for some of these pedophiles.
ABC reached out to the people who run Kik, who told us Kik cooperated with the FBI for their investigation. Kik cooperates with law enforcement to combat child predators anywhere in the world, either under provision of a court order or in emergency situations such as this one. All right, there are plenty of apps out there like this, but this one is one of the largest, most popular. 250 million users, 70% are under the age of 25. There are no parental controls.
In the aftermath of such a tragedy, it's easy to believe that shutting down apps like this would make the internet a safer place. And to an extent, there is definitely truth there. While there's no doubt that apps that operate like Kik Messenger, ones that allow for complete anonymity, do come with real dangers, but in today's digital world, for every app that disappears or gets shut down, many more will simply take its place. Most of us using some form of social media every single day, every single hour even. We connect with people, we get to see into each other's lives, we make new friends and we keep up with old ones. Technology and social media moves at such a rapid pace that digital regulations struggle to keep up. Online anonymity and unchecked access creates a space where predators and people with bad intentions can exploit those loopholes, lie and prey on the vulnerable. We've covered several cases where the reality of this has proven fatal. But the solution isn't as simple as banning a single app. It's about awareness, education, and understanding that in a world where connection with anyone is just a click away, not everyone is who they claim to be. Social media and technology in general is both the most advanced it has ever been, and yet also everything is still so small. Every day brings new developments, new platforms, and new ways to connect, making what feels like cutting edge today outdated a year later. We often think back to our personal first experiences of social media. Facebook was really new. MySpace was pretty big, but it was mainly just your core group of friends that you were interacting with. And platforms like MSN and Habbo Hotel, for example, were our first experiences in talking with people we didn't know. But things like this were still relatively new, and we often just waited for the family computer to free up so we could spend a couple of hours a week exploring these spaces with our friends. as most people we knew, including us, didn't have smartphones that granted access to these platforms. Put simply, nothing was as instant as it is now. It's a vastly different world, which is very overwhelming to navigate, especially if you're younger or vulnerable. Nicole Lovell was an immensely strong young girl. She had fought her way into this world and went through more in her short life than we could ever comprehend. She was groomed into really believing she had found someone she could talk to, share things with, and even love. One can only imagine what her last hour was like as she realised what was happening to her. David, Nicole's dad, was diagnosed with severe depression and post-traumatic stress disorder since losing his daughter. And Tammy sees a grief counsellor and has trouble sleeping. She wishes they had done what they'd done to Nicole to her instead, and if she could swap places, she would without hesitating. Nicole's youth pastor, Josh, said, "Our hearts still ache in sadness and secret tears still flow. What it meant to lose you, no one will ever know. This is written on her grave." Tammy visits her daughter's grave every morning and sits there with her for an hour. She said, "Everything reminds me of Nicole. I was blessed to be Nicole's mother, to be her friend for 13 years. We fought every fight together. She was a great and beautiful girl." If you'd like to support our channel and help us to continue to make content, please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. It helps us so much and we really appreciate it.